This is Say Cheese and Die Screaming, Book 8 in the Goosebumps HorrorLand series by RL Stine Enter HorrorLand section. Got a picture of the ticket to enter HorrorLand. The story so far. Several kids received mysterious invitations to be very special guests at HorrorLand theme park. They looked forward to a week of scary fun, but the scares quickly became too real when Slappy the evil dummy, Dr. Maniac, and other menacing villains from the kids' past started to appear. Two very special guests, Brittany Crosby and Molly Malloy, disappeared in a cafe with a mirrored wall. The other kids have been trying desperately to find them. The park guides, called horrors, have been no help at all. Except for one horror named Byron. He warned the kids they were all in danger. He said he'd help them escape from HorrorLand. Escape where? The kids keep finding clues about another theme park called Panic Park. They don't know how to find Panic Park, but they know that mirrors play a big part in the mystery. Why are there no mirrors anywhere in HorrorLand? To find answers, Michael Monroe leads them down to the secret forbidden tunnels under HorrorLand. They are caught and chased by horrors. To help their escape, they let a bunch of ugly monsters out of their cages. Now Michael has also vanished. The others are desperate to find him, and find their way out of the real horrors of HorrorLand. Julie continues the story. Chapter 1. My first day in HorrorLand, and I couldn't wait to start taking pictures. I brought 3 cameras with me, including the awesome new digital camera my dad bought me after I won the photo contest against David Blank. Poor Sammy. When the invitation came to be a very special guest at HorrorLand, he was totally psyched, but Mom and Dad had him signed up for 4 weeks of day camp. Of course, he begged and cried and whined and pleaded and threw a tantrum, but there was no way he could come with me. I was glad I didn't have to take the little pest along. I wanted to hang out with other very special guests. I wanted to take a ton of scary photos. I unpacked my suitcase. Then I hurried out of Stagger Inn and headed to Zombie Plaza. It was a bright sunny day, kind of hot and sticky. Crowds of people jammed the plaza. I saw a row of small shops. At one end stood a creepy-looking building that resembled a castle. A marquee over the entrance read Haunted Theater. I walked past a long line of people in front of a purple and green ice cream cart. No, not ice cream. Big letters on the front of the cart read Nose Cones. A horror in a long purple apron was handing out ice cream cones shaped like human noses. "Everyone come pick your nose," he shouted. "Pick your nose, it's yummy." I snapped a few shots of him. He was funny. He slapped a frozen nose onto his nose and posed for me. Across the plaza, I spotted a fortune teller's booth. Behind the glass sat an old woman carved out of wood. She was dressed in a red velvet dress and had a turban on her head. Madame Doom. I walked closer and raised my camera. I snapped a photo of the booth, but when I checked my picture out on the view screen, I had a surprise. Standing next to the booth was a ventriloquist dummy. He had big eyes, bright red lips, and an evil smile. He appeared to be standing up all on his own. "Weird," I muttered. I turned back to Madame Doom's booth. No dummy standing there. I flashed another picture. The grinning dummy was there again. In this photo, he had one hand raised, as if he was waving to me. But how could that be? Why couldn't I see him standing there? I started over to the booth, but a loud clang made me stop. Startled, I nearly dropped my camera. I spun around and saw a large grate in the middle of the walkway. The grate flew open, and a bald head popped up from the underground. At first I thought it was a man. He had bright blue eyes, human eyes, but then I saw the pointed pig ears on top of his head, standing straight up. And as he hoisted himself up through the grate opening, I gasped. His body was fat and covered with dark fur, like a gorilla. What was a human head doing on that animal body? He pulled himself onto the walkway. Then he turned and helped tug another creature out of the hole. The second creature looked just like him. They both had big padded claws with curled talons like bear paws. They gnashed their teeth and growled. Thick yellow drool spilled from their mouths and plopped onto the pavement. Some people screamed and ran away. I saw 2 little girls start to cry. Their parents picked them up and hurried off with them. Other people stared at the ugly creatures and laughed. It had to be a HorrorLand joke, right? I raised my camera. I snapped a few shots. I stopped when I realized the 2 creatures had their bright blue eyes locked on me. They grunted to each other, raised their talons, and came running at me, roaring like angry beasts. Chapter 2. I froze. I dropped the camera, and it dangled at my waist from its strap. Before I could move, I heard angry shouts. Back! Get back! 4 horrors ran between me and the monsters. The horrors carried long, pointed sticks. Back! They yelled. Back! Get back! They jabbed the sticks at the 2 furry creatures. The creatures snarled in rage. They swiped at the sticks with their big bare paws. One creature grabbed a stick out of a horror's hand and hurled it into the crowd. More people screamed and ran. I raised my camera and snapped a few more shots. This has to be some kind of show, I told myself. The monsters are fake. But why did the horrors appear so frightened? Were they just good actors? The groans and roars of the monsters rang out over the screams of the crowd. The horrors jabbed and pointed sticks into the creatures' bellies. Back, get back, now. Down, get back down there. I snapped picture after picture. One of the monsters grabbed his belly and moaned. He backed into the open grate and disappeared down the hole. It took another few minutes to push and poke the other creature back down where he came from. The horrors rushed to slam the grate shut. 2 more horrors came running over. They both seemed very alarmed. The monsters are still loose down there, one of them cried. We can't get them back in their cages. Those stupid kids who set them free. Let's find them, his partner shouted. If this is all a show to scare people, I thought, they're doing a really good job. I started to walk away, but I suddenly realized that all 6 horrors were watching me. Before I could move, they came running. They formed a circle around me. 2 of the horrors raised their pointed sticks. A tall horror with bright green fur and yellow eyes stretched out his hand. Give me your camera, he growled. I laughed. You're joking, right? His yellow eyes darkened. It's not a joke, he said. Give me your camera, now. Chapter 3. You're not funny, I said. You can't take my camera. I tried to stuff it into my backpack, but the horror grabbed the camera out of my hand. Ow! I screamed as the strap snapped and whipped my arm. The horror fumbled with the camera to open it. He tore out the memory card and tossed it as far as he could. Then he handed the camera back to me. Have a nice day, he said. He and the others walked away. I could hear them muttering to each other about the escaped monsters. I closed the camera and stuffed it into my backpack. My heart was pounding. I felt really upset. They don't have the right to do that. This is a free country. Luckily, I had 2 other cameras in my pack and extra memory cards. I started to pull another camera out when I saw a bunch of kids my age running across the plaza toward me. They looked as if they'd been running a long way. They were red-faced, sweaty, and breathing hard. A tall guy with dark hair hurried up to me. Have you seen a big kid, very wide, kind of hulky, looks a little like a bulldog? He asked. No, I said. Is he lost or something? The other kids pulled up behind the tall boy. They all struggled to catch their breath. We can't find him, a girl said. We're really freaked. Did you see the monsters? A boy asked me. Yeah, they're totally lifelike, I said. They're not fake, the boy said. They're real. I rolled my eyes. Real monsters? I said. Tell me another one. We're not kidding, the girl insisted. She told me her name was Abby. Are you a very special guest too? I nodded. I told them my name. I just arrived, I said. I was looking for you guys. The other kids introduced themselves quickly. There were 7 of them, but I'm pretty good at remembering names. I tried to memorize each one. There was Billy, Sheena, Matt, Carly Beth, Sabrina, Robbie, and Abby. Abby grabbed my arm. You're lucky we found you, she said. I frowned at her. Why? What's up? Abby didn't let go of my arm. We've got to get out of this park, she said. 2 girls have disappeared, and now Michael Monroe too. The tall boy named Matt glanced behind him. Then he turned back to me. If you're one of us, you're in danger, Julie. These kids were serious. It wasn't a joke. What kind of danger? I asked. This place is supposed to be good, scary fun, isn't it? Before they could answer, Carly Beth pointed across the plaza. "Guess who?" she said. "Here come the monster police." I turned and saw two tall horrors in black and orange uniforms with shiny silver badges on their chests. They were trotting in our direction. The kids took off, running toward the haunted theater. Abby glanced back, saw me standing there, confused. She waved frantically for me to follow. They were already far ahead of me. I started to run fast to catch up with them. Why were they so afraid of the monster police? I had a million questions I wanted to ask, but for now, I just wanted to make sure I didn't lose them as they dodged and darted through the crowds in the plaza. They made a sharp turn, ran between a couple of food carts, then shot into a narrow, dark opening in a concrete wall. I leaped over a baby stroller, my backpack bouncing on my shoulders. Abby was the last one to disappear into the opening. The sign above it read, "Tunnel of Screams." I hesitated for a moment. Then, breathing hard, I followed them into the tunnel. I found myself in a narrow, black passageway. The light was so dim I could only see shadows. No way to tell how long the tunnel was. I could barely see 2 feet in front of me. I heard voices and the scrape of shoes on the floor. I lurched forward, keeping one hand on the tunnel wall. "Oh," I gasped as I heard a girl's shrill scream. I stopped, pressed my hand on the wall. Another scream, and then two boys shrieking high and shrill. I covered my ears. The screams seemed to be coming from everywhere. Ahead of me, behind me, above me. "Hey, Abby," I shouted. My voice echoed in the long tunnel. "Are you here? Carly Beth? Matt?" No answer. Ugh! A long, loud scream just ahead made me cover my ears. More shrieks and screams rang out, blaring louder, louder. I started to move again, walking quickly now. I was desperate to get out of this creepy dark tunnel. How long could it be? The horrifying shrieks grew deafening, painful. My ears throbbed. I could feel my heart racing in my chest. The tunnel curved. Dim yellow light washed up over me. I could see the shadows of people up ahead. The deafening screams followed me, and then I felt something sticky on my forehead. I pulled it off, a long, wet worm. I felt another one drop onto my shoulder. With a gasp, I pulled one out of my hair. I looked up. I could see the worms dropping from the tunnel's ceiling, hundreds of them. I tore them off my neck. Out of my hair, a worm dropped into my mouth. I spit it out, gagging and choking. The kids weren't lying, I thought. There's something wrong with this park. Everything is too scary and too real to be fun. I started to run through the dim light, my shoes slapping the concrete tunnel floor. I slipped and slid on a thick puddle of worms on the floor. Slapping at the worms with both hands, tearing them off my shoulders, my hair, I ran. Ran blindly through the long tunnel, the screams throbbing in my ears, and then a shrill scream over my head made me stop and gasp in horror, because I recognized the voice. It was my scream. Chapter 4. Panic shook my entire body. My breath caught in my throat. Frozen in the darkness, I listened to my scream, and then I remembered. The horror in the entrance booth recorded me screaming when I first arrived at the park. He said it was so they could identify me later. So it's a joke after all. This is all a HorrorLand joke, I decided. My legs were still trembling, but I started to walk again. A few seconds later, I saw bright daylight, the end of the tunnel. "Yay!" I cheered as I stumbled out of the tunnel. I blinked several times, waiting for my eyes to adjust to the bright light. I brushed a few more worms off my shoulders. I shielded my eyes with one hand and searched for the other kids. No sign of them. Maybe they went back to the hotel, I decided. I was totally eager to catch up with them and find out what was really going on. Why did they seem so scared? Why did they think we very special guests were in danger? I took a few steps towards Stagger Inn when a hand grasped my shoulder. I let out a startled cry. I turned to see a fierce-looking horror. His shiny purple cape fluttered in the wind. He had short yellow horns curling up from his purple furry head. I glimpsed the brass name tag on his chest. It read Byron. "Let go of me," I shouted, but he squeezed my arm tighter and jerked me off my feet. I glanced all around. "Hurry," he whispered. "I don't want them to see." He started to pull me into the tunnel. "Let go! What are you doing?" I screamed. "Why are you taking me back in there?" Chapter 5. Let go of me. I tried to swing out of his grasp, but he was too strong. He pulled me into the darkness of the tunnel. I could hear the shrill screams echoing behind me. I felt like screaming too. "Don't be afraid, Byron whispered. "I came to help you." "Help me?" I stammered. He let go of me. Then he shoved something into my hand. "You can use this to escape," he said. I blinked. Escape? Escape from what? Byron's eyes darted to the tunnel entrance. He really did seem afraid of being caught. "You've all got to get out of Horrorland," he said. "You're not safe here." "That's what those kids said," I told him, "but I don't understand." He raised a big hand and cut me off. "They brought you here for a reason," he said. "You've got to get to the other park." "Huh?" I squinted at him. "Other park? But I just got to this park." He shook his head. "Listen to me, Julie. You'll all be safe at the other park. Tell the others. Tell them I will try to help." I don't understand what you're talking about," I replied. "Why?" He was staring past me, out into the light. I turned and saw two horrors running toward us. "You must hurry," Byron said. "The ones who brought you here are getting impatient." But, I sputtered. "If they bring you to the keeper," Byron said, "you are doomed." Then he took off, running hard. The two horrors spotted him. They began waving their arms and shouting for him to stop, but Byron ducked and dodged his way through the crowd. After a short while, the two horrors stopped and gave up the chase. I stepped out of the tunnel. I began to follow the path that led to the hotel. My head was spinning. I suddenly felt I was living in one of those underwater photos where everything is just a blue blur. Byron's words kept repeating in my mind, but they didn't make any sense at all. The other park? The keeper? Was he putting on a show, like those monsters that climbed out from underground? Was he serious? I suddenly realized I had something gripped tightly in my hand, the thing Byron had given me in the tunnel. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off my confusion. Then I raised my hand to examine whatever it was. A piece of paper. It looked like an ad or something. It was wrapped around a small, hard object. After I unwrapped it, I put the paper in my pocket and looked at what was left in my hand. A small hand mirror. It was oval-shaped and had a short, red plastic handle. What's the big deal about a mirror? I wondered. Why did he give me this? Then I raised the mirror to my face and let out a gasp. Chapter 6. "I look awful," I cried. I raised the mirror closer. My hair was a tangled mess. I brushed it out of my eyes. Then I pulled 2 more worms out of it. My cheeks were pink and splotchy. I had a long dirt streak on my forehead. From the tunnel? I look as scary as a horror, I thought. Give me a cape and horns and I can go to work in the park. Suddenly, I felt a strong pull. My head was being pulled toward the mirror, as if it were some kind of powerful magnet. Before I realized it, my face was almost pressed against the glass. Was it some kind of trick mirror? I didn't like it. It was creeping me out. I tossed the mirror into a tall metal trash can. Then I headed toward my room to freshen up. "Julie? Hey, Julie!" I stopped when I heard a girl calling my name. I turned and saw Abby waving to me frantically. She and the other kids huddled in a small grassy area at the side of the haunted theater. Matt and Carly Beth were perched on a park bench. The others were sitting on the grass in front of them. They had all been talking at once, but they stopped when I came trotting over. "Where were you?" Carly Beth asked. "I lost you in that screaming tunnel," I said. I sighed. "That was a creepy place." "It gets a lot creepier than that," Robbie said. "Well, you won't believe what happened to me," I said. "A big horror pulled me into the tunnel and started giving me all kinds of warnings." Matt leaned forward on the bench. They all raised their eyes to me. "Warnings?" "Tell us what he said," Matt said. I stepped up beside the bench so I could face everyone. "His name was Byron," I said. "I read his name tag and—" "You saw Byron?" Carly Beth cried. "Where?" They all seemed to get very tense. "I told you," I said. "He pulled me into the tunnel. Do you know him?" "Go on," Matt said. "Tell us everything he said." "He warned me that we were all in danger," I said. "He said we have to get to the other park, and he gave me this." I pulled the piece of paper out of my pocket. Matt and Carly Beth jumped up from their seats. The others gathered around me. "Let's see it," Robbie said. I unfolded it and held it up to them. It looked like an old ad. The color picture at the top showed some kind of cafe or ice cream place. The tables all had blue and white checked tablecloths. I saw mirrors on all the walls. These old-fashioned looking kids sat at the tables. They were all eating huge ice cream sundaes from tall glass dishes. Beneath the picture, in big, bold type, it read, Stubby's Sunday Shack, 10 Panic Park Drive. I don't believe it, Matt cried. This is totally incredible, the girl named Sheena exclaimed. The kids all started talking at once. They passed the page around and kept staring at it, saying how awesome and amazing it was. I don't get it, I said. What's the big deal? They didn't hear me, so I shouted, I don't understand. Please explain this to me. The 2 girls who disappeared, Billy said. That's where they disappeared. He jabbed his finger at the page. In that cafe? I asked. We were there, Billy's sister Sheena said breathlessly. We saw Brittany and Molly through the window, but when we went inside, they were gone, Billy finished her sentence for her. We were in that cafe, Matt said. We were right there, but it isn't in Horrorland. See the address? Stubby's Sunday Shack is in Panic Park, the other park. I shook my head hard. This isn't making sense, I said. Are you saying that we were in 2 parks at once? That you were in 2 parks at once? No, we were in our hotel, in Stagger Inn, Sheena said, but the cafe appeared. It just appeared from out of nowhere, Billy said. I put my hand in the mirror, Sheena said, pointing to the picture, and then went right in. The mirror was soft, and Sheena went invisible for a while, Matt told me. Then she disappeared too, just like Brittany and Molly. I think I went into the cafe mirror or something, Sheena said. I went to the other park. Through the mirror? I asked. Mirrors are important, Matt said. Mirrors are an important clue. We think maybe that's how we can get to the other park. I slapped my forehead. I don't believe it, I cried. Byron, that horror Byron, he gave me a mirror. He what? Matt said. He gave me a hand mirror, I said. He told me to use it, but I didn't understand. He was trying to help us escape this place, Carly Beth said. Julie, we've been searching everywhere for a mirror. This is awesome news, Billy declared. What did you do with it? Sabrina demanded. Is it in your backpack? Give it to us, Robbie cried. That mirror is our way out of here, Matt said. He pumped his fists in the air. Yes, yes. They turned to me. I suddenly felt sick. I could feel the blood rush to my face. I knew I was blushing. I started. I couldn't get the words out. Finally, I confessed. I tossed it away. I didn't know. They groaned and sighed and shook their heads. I felt so bad. Abby grabbed my hand. Where did you throw it away, Julie? Do you remember where you tossed it? I think so, I said. It was a tall metal trash can. I think it was right outside the exit to the Tunnel of Screams. Show us, Matt said. I turned and took off running. They all followed close behind. No one said a word. I kept praying the mirror would still be there. I just met these kids, and I'd already let them down. We passed a food cart selling roadkill waffles. I didn't slow down to see what they were. A horror was passing out free plastic fangs to kids. He kept shouting, Fang you very much, fangs a lot, fang you kindly. The park seemed normal and fun, but I'd been here for less than a day, and I already knew that it wasn't. Something was wrong in Horrorland. I believed I was in danger, real danger. Running hard, I saw the black tunnel exit up ahead. A few feet away stood the trash can, and then I stopped and uttered a horrified cry. No! A bright purple garbage truck was parked a few feet from the trash can. I could hear it roar as it chewed up trash. A horror in a long purple apron picked up the trash can in his purple gloves. He was carrying the can to the truck to empty it. No, please, I tried to scream, but my voice choked in my throat. Please. No, wait, Matt shouted to the horror. Wait, please, don't dump that can. Please wait. Chapter 7. I gasped as the horror hoisted up the trash can. He lifted it to the back of the truck and dumped everything in. With a low roar, the truck instantly began to grind up the trash. We ran up to the horror as he set the empty can back to the ground. He turned to us and raised a gloved hand to one of his horns. Sorry, he shouted. What did you kids say? I couldn't hear you over the noise of the truck. Never mind, Carly Beth groaned, shaking her head. I let out a sigh. I looked around at the unhappy faces. These kids must think I'm a total jerk, I told myself. That horror Byron gave me something important and I just tossed it in the trash. The horror climbed behind the wheel and the truck rumbled away. We stood there watching it go. Now what do we do? Sheena asked. We were so close. I'm sorry, I muttered. We can't stand here feeling sorry for ourselves, Abby said. Abby is right, Carly Beth agreed. There are 8 of us, right? We should be able to think of something. Let's get out of here, right now. But how? Billy asked. We can't just walk out the front exit. Matt's dark eyes flashed. A smile crossed his face. Why can't we? He cried. Hey, why can't we walk out the front exit? That's totally brilliant. He slapped Billy on the back. Billy frowned at him. You're joking, right? I'm not joking, Matt said. We just walk out the front gate the way we came in. No problem. I don't think so, Carly Beth said. The horrors, they've tried very hard to keep us here. But 3 kids have already escaped Horrorland, Robbie said. Molly and Brittany and Michael. They escaped to the other park, right? We don't really know where those 3 kids are, Sabrina said. Maybe they're in the other park. Maybe they're not. I glanced across Zombie Plaza. 2 MPs in their black and orange uniforms were leaning against the wall of a souvenir store called Guts and Stuff. Were they watching us? Carly Beth spotted them too. I saw her shiver. Listen, guys, she said. We're not going to feel safe until we're out of this park, so I think we should head to the front gate and check it out. She's right, Matt agreed. We've got to give it a try. Maybe we can sneak out. For sure, Billy said. We can think up a way to distract the guards, and then we can run through the exit and keep running. I'll bet our cell phones will work outside the park, Abby said. We can call our parents. We can call for help. Everyone started talking at once. Some kids didn't believe they'd even let us get to the front gate, but we all agreed it was worth a try. We began walking quickly, away from the plaza, along the side of our hotel, then along the curving path that led to the exit gate. I kept glancing back to see if the MPs were following us. I didn't see them. It was early afternoon. The exit gate wasn't crowded. Most people were staying till evening. As we walked closer, I saw 4 exit turnstiles. A sign with a big arrow read, Survivors this way. There were 2 small booths next to the turnstiles. One of them was empty. A horror sat in the other one, reading a magazine. My heart began to race. My hands were suddenly ice cold. I knew the others were really tense too. Come on, keep walking, everyone, Carly Beth whispered. We stepped past the horror in his booth and approached the turnstiles. Eyes straight ahead, Carly Beth whispered. Don't stop, don't look back. Let's go. We're out of here. I held my breath. We all kept walking. Matt reached the turnstile first. He raised his hands to push his way out. And behind us, in the booth, the horror shouted, Hey, you kids, stop right there. Chapter 8. Caught. Matt groaned and dropped back from the turnstile. I knew this was too easy, he muttered. We turned as the horror came hurrying to us. He was huge and powerful looking, with a big belly that bounced in front of him as he ran. He had purple fur all over his body, purple spiky hair, long dark horns that stood straight up on his head. His eyes were red and angry. Wait right there, he boomed. Don't anybody move. So close, I thought. We came so close. I could see the rows of cars in the big parking lot on the other side of the turnstiles. The horror bulled his way in front of us. He was using his big body to block us from the exit. His hands were balled into fists at his side. His name tag was covered up by his fur, so I couldn't read his name. I took a step back. My heart raced even faster. This dude was scary. Are you leaving? He boomed. His voice rumbled from his belly like thunder. Do you think we allow people to escape from Horrorland alive? He demanded. We stared at him in silence. Then he laughed. Just joking, he said. He slapped Billy on the back. I think I really scared you. Ha! Billy couldn't get any words out. The horror pulled a small square object from his uniform pocket. If you're leaving, he said, better let me stamp your hand, in case you want to return. Stamp our hands? My mouth dropped open. The others were in shock too. We lined up. The horror took a wooden stamp, rubbed it on his purple ink pad. Then he stamped a purple H on our right hands. Hope you had a horrifying time, he said. Matt didn't hesitate. He pushed through the turnstile. On the other side, he started to trot to the parking lot. Carly Beth followed him out. Sabrina was right behind her. One by one, all 8 of us pushed our way out through the turnstile. I was the last one out of the park. As I stepped into the parking lot, I turned back to see if the horror was watching us. No, he had returned to his booth. We kept close together as we made our way down an aisle of parked cars. When we were out of sight of the exit booths, Billy leaped into the air. "Awesome," he shouted. "Awesome." He and his sister Sheena pumped their fists into the air, then touched knuckles. We all burst out laughing. It was such a relief. Carly Beth had a huge grin on her face. "I don't believe it," she cried. "We're out. We made it out. That was so easy." The hot sun beamed down on us. The rows and rows of cars gleamed in the sunlight. Matt glanced all around. Then he turned back to us. "Now what?" he asked. Chapter 9. I fumbled in my backpack for my cell phone. I pulled it out and flipped it open. I shook my head. I held the phone up so the others could see. "No service," I muttered. Robbie stared at his phone. "I don't have any bars either. Guess we have to move farther away from the park," he said. Matt slapped his hand on her car roof. "Where is everyone? Maybe we can get someone to give us a lift to the nearest town." "Good idea," I said. "Then we can—" "Oh." I let out a sharp cry. I felt kind of weird, kind of fluttery. My right hand started to itch really bad. I started to scratch it. That didn't help. I squinted at the back of my hand. "Oh no," I screamed. "Look!" I held my hand up. The purple H that horror stamped. "It's growing," I cried. I stared in shock. I couldn't believe it. The lines of the H were growing longer, spreading over the back of my hand. "Oh, wow, mine too," Sabrina gasped. "Mine too." "Oh, it itches. It really itches." In seconds, we all began scratching the backs of our hands, staring in horror as the purple lines grew longer, and then the lines began to sprout, like slender purple weeds. They popped off the skin and stretched right off our hands. I grabbed at mine. I wrapped my fingers around the growing, stretching strings and gave a hard tug to pull them off. "Ouch!" I screamed. They were attached to my hand, stuck into my skin, like jungle vines. They reached up, growing faster, growing fatter. "It's like snakes," I cried. "It's like snakes growing right out of my hand." Their purple tendrils twisted in the air, rising higher, like they were reaching up toward the sun. "Help! Oh, help! I can't pull it off. Ouch!" I tried snapping my hand back and forth. I tried tugging at the tendrils again, but they were as strong as electrical cords and stretching fast. We were all screaming and thrashing our hands around, trying to fight the growing vines, but there was no way to stop them. They grew so fast. The tendrils snaking from my hand were at least 6 feet long now. They stood up high, then lowered themselves quickly and began to wrap around me. They wrapped around and around me, tightening like elastic. Tightening, tightening. "Help! Somebody!" We were all screaming now, trying to squirm out from under the thick vines growing from our own hands. They wrapped around my body, climbed higher, stretched around my head now, so hard to see. I realized the vines were tying us together, all 8 of us, trapping inside their tight net, holding us down. Couldn't move, so hard to breathe, tightening around us. Is someone going to help us? Are we going to suffocate out here? Is this the end? To be continued in Book 9. Okay, so now, Fear File number 8. You open up the manila folder. On the left side, there is a crumpled up paper underneath, and on top seems to be a picture of another manila folder. It says MP in one little section, an S in almost regular type above a B, L. Then over here it has a Z with looks like push pins on the top and bottom. And then underneath that is another what looks like a picture, and with a wooden stamper thing and an H stamp, and then a little block that looks like a W and a V. On the right side, it's got the HorrorLand logo Memo. To all crude cart staff. From Mr. Pew K. Latte. Crude cart guidelines. It has been brought to my attention that some crude cart workers are not adhering to HorrorLand FDA requirements. Please review the following guidelines to keep your carts unclean, unsafe, and unhealthy. Accept delivery from Ripe Garb Age service every morning. Kids will be demanding extra larvae and extra maggots. Keep a good supply. If you sneeze on the food you are selling, simply wipe it off on the front of your shirt. If you have any questions, please direct them to yourself. Foul and disgusting administration. Find the rest at www.escapehorrorland.com. Lizzie. So here's the thing I was describing earlier. So that, they're both paper clipped on top of a crumpled up paper on the left side of the manila folder. And then here are here's the memo that they sent out. And notice it's all typed, and then this is written by Lizzie. Map number 8. I see the playpen, scream your head off, prizes, roadkill waffles, a little cart stand thing with an umbrella on top, and then the tunnel of screams. Map 8. Map number 1 connects right here. Map number 12 connects up here. So yeah, that's that. This book is your ticket to www.enterhorrorland.com. Checklist number 8. Vampire alert. Aim carefully. Your life is at stake. Fix the broken mirror. You'll be surprised what you see. Expose the truth. Catch a horror in the picture frame. Trick or treats. The creatures are hungry. Feed them before they feed on you. The horrors are coming. Make your way through the tunnel of screams, but watch out for the falling worms. And we are done with book 8.